Work with clients who are in alignment. Reach out to people who are in alignment, not just because you have always thought about this brand and it would be so great to work with them, or I saw X, Y, and Z work with them, I'm going to go after a contract with them too. No, what are the core values of your company? That's where you start. And after you understand what your core values are, like integrity and trust and operating inside of excellence, being the go-to expert in your field. Like there's so many different ways to create your core values. And under them, you probably have some indicators. How do those indicators align with those of the businesses that you want to do business with? So you can do that by finding their website, first of all, going to search their press releases. Where have they been in the past? And how are they showing up in this world? What kind of work have they been doing philanthropically? What kind of work do they do to earn their money? And how does my mission align with what they're currently doing in this space? And so that's how you start to create your hit list. It's really based on research, because you don't want to start working with a company that's out of alignment with your core values, because if something happens to go wrong or go outside of what your core values are with that other company, that still falls back on you.
You're listening to the Black to Business podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. Whether you're just starting a business or you've been in business for a while, as the visionary and leader, you always want to think of ways to maximize your earning potential and make sure that you aren't leaving money on the table. One way to consider doing this is through securing major deals and contracts. There are so many benefits, including, in the words of today's guest, having revenue on repeat. In Black to Business fashion, we wanted to bring you in an expert to show you exactly how to get there and have your revenue on repeat. Tiffany Washington is joining us and leading today's conversation. She's a business and education expert specializing in helping emerging entrepreneurs overcome their business hurdles and secure consistent 5-figure deals. During this conversation, Tiffany is really breaking down how to actually prepare your pitch to secure major deals. We're diving into how to write a business proposal and some of the key things to include. So this is definitely a masterclass episode, and it's packed with so much value. So I highly suggest having a notepad or something to take notes handy. Let's dive in. Before we get into today's episode, I want to announce that we've reopened the applications for our directory, The Connect. We're looking for businesses that provide professional services that will be beneficial to our target audience of entrepreneurs who are in their startup journey. So if that sounds like your business, you may now submit your business to be listed by visiting blacktobusiness.com/theconnect. Applications are open every 4 months, and we're now accepting applications for businesses for 2022. So to give you a little more information about the directory and how you can apply, the reason we created the Connect is to provide business owners with the resources needed to grow their businesses. And being that Black to Business is a platform that assists aspiring Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses, we are often asked for recommendations for industry experts who can assist these entrepreneurs with their business needs. So we wanted to create a solution. We want to include businesses who are doing the work. And if that sounds like you, we want to help promote your business to assist you in increasing your exposure, but also letting people know about the work that you're doing to continue to push forward Black-owned businesses. So head over to blacktobusiness.com/theconnect to apply. Now let's get into the episode. Tiffany, welcome to the Black to Business podcast. I'm excited about today's topic, so welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited as well.
Of course. So I always like to start off with, just for my listeners who are new to you, if you could just tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get where you are today? And what is it that you do in your business?
Well, I am a former school principal who ditched her day job to help women experts build their coaching and consulting business. And I help them to pitch like a pro and land multi-figure contracts. And if we back up into how I actually got into it, it all started with workplace bullying. So as an assistant principal, one of the things that I experienced was berating from my colleague. She had the same exact title as I did, similar roles and responsibilities. However, she thought she could run me. And for a little while, I actually allowed her to. And when I say run me, that meant run my mind into the ground. And one of the things that really literally happened to me is I ended up losing about 20 pounds within just a couple of months without trying, and became extra stressed, woke up crying 30 minutes before it was time for me to actually get out of the bed, dragging myself to and from school every day because I was physically tired of the public display of disrespect that I was receiving. And as a result of this going on and on and on, being berated in front of my colleagues and peers and even students, I went to my principal at the time and I asked him if there was anything that could be done because we had taken it up the chain of command. We talked with an actual mediator first. That didn't work. And then talked with the principal himself. That didn't work. So he was just like, well, what else would you have me to do? I said, I just want to work in an environment that's not toxic. How can you help to do that? Because essentially it's your responsibility. And so he brought in his boss, which is like the mini superintendent of schools. And she looked me in my face and she asked me what I want to happen. And I said, I want to stop being harassed. And she was like, why can't you just tell her to leave you alone? And if you do want to leave, you only have a couple of options. Because I asked her, after she told me there was nothing she could do, I told her that I wanted to transfer schools. And this particular district, they loved, for some reason, and in my mind, they loved to glorify people who were bulldogs, people who could get the job done at no cost, at the cost of other people. And that wasn't who I was. I always operated with a sense of love. And so when I told her that I desired to transfer, she was like, well, I don't have a place for you to go right now. So you have two options. Either you can stay here and tough it out and grow some thick skin, or you can resign. And at that time, and I was a 20-something-year-old then, and I didn't have the option of resigning. So I stayed and I toughed it out, as she said. And eventually she came back to me a few months later and said, hey, I remember what you said. I found you a school. Come to find out, it was just convenient for her to do a switch between me and another person at a different school who was having similar issues. And she just swapped us. My new school ended up being about an hour and 30 minutes one way driving every morning. I asked her when I was going to be leaving, and she said, today will be your last day. You report tomorrow. So literally throwing things into my car overnight. Kids were seeing me, kids that were staying after school, because I found out right as the school day was ending. So I immediately had to start packing my things. But kids were asking me, Miss Washington, where are you going? Why are you loading up all your stuff, essentially? So it was a very embarrassing moment. But that transitioned me into being a leader at that next school I was at, and it being totally glorious. It was a complete turnaround until it wasn't anymore, right? So this time it wasn't workplace bullying. It was more so micromanaging and having to do things that I knew my job did not call for. So I said, you know what? It's time for me to go. I don't know where I'm going, but I need to get the heck up out of here. Right. So one of the things that I ended up doing was, I'm a spiritual person. So I prayed about what my next step was going to be, and I fasted about it. And I eventually came to the conclusion that it was time for me to transition out of education completely. And as a result of that, I said, well, what am I going to do next? I don't have anything in my toolbox to do. All I know is I have some skills that I could possibly capitalize on. And those skills were writing and actually speaking. So those two elements were what I started with. So every morning during the second semester, after I knew I was going to quit, after I turned in my resignation papers, I still had to work through the rest of my contract because that's the way my contract was written. But every morning I woke up and I spent at least an hour writing my 21-day devotional. That 21-day devotional is called Women Winning at Work, and it focuses on how to get through workplace difficulty. So I wrote the book that I wish that I had when I was actually going through that difficult phase with workplace bullying. So I finished that book within 21 days, my first draft, and then I sent it off to the editor so that we can start working on the second draft and start finalizing some things. And by June of 2016, I was out of there, and I built my business on that book because it talked about workplace toxicity and it talked about how to overcome workplace difficulty. I used that as my platform to start speaking at conferences, start speaking at colleges, and my messaging became how to win in the workplace. And so that's where things kind of started for me. I just decided to take the leap. I didn't have a business built prior to being a school principal. I just decided that that was going to be the last time that someone got to take advantage of my expertise, but then belittle it at the same time. So that's my story. And that's how I eventually ended up here where I am as a business and education consultant. I spent a long time running away from education thereafter. But what I noticed is that the skill set that I had was something that could be utilized in the online space. And so I transitioned into coaching because it was something that I was already doing formally inside of education, because I was responsible for a group of teachers and their evaluations and all of that. And my master's degree also focused on me ensuring that I had certification in cognitive coaching. So that was my base anyway. And I used that base to build my business into what it is now. And so now I teach other people how to go after what they want, essentially, through pitching and writing proposals and securing partnerships.
I love it. Such an amazing story and a journey of highs and lows. But on the end, you came out with a high, and I'm just so happy for you. And I'm happy you're here because you're welcome. And I think I love about your message is that you are clear in that you feel that people are leaving money on the table. And I think that that's something that we definitely have to address today. But I think in general, it's something that we have to talk about. Like you mentioned, you didn't have a business beforehand, but you kind of like fell into this and, you found out what your skills were. Survival will do that. But yes. So I want to first talk about leaving money on the table and building brand credibility. So your advice is that coaches, experts, and consultants should be booking corporate clients and partnerships. Why is that, and what are the benefits of that?
Yeah, so I think that building a business on the back of one-off individual clients isn't sustainable long-term, especially if you want to build a legacy for future generations of your family. And what I do know, and what I found out over the course of me navigating this entrepreneurial path, is that corporations pay handsomely for the knowledge that you already have. They literally have hefty budgets set aside for contracting with experts. All you have to do is understand how to properly position yourself and ask for what you want. And that's essentially what the framework is of what I teach, how to ask for exactly what you want, but in a way that is compelling enough for somebody to say yes. So that's why I encourage people to get paid partnerships and to work with corporate clients. And people are often scared of the word corporate, and we can get into that later. But some of the benefits of me actually saying, yes, I want to work with you because I have these expert skills set aside for you is because, one, I get to take midday naps. I'm a nap girl all day long. So because I am able to create my own schedule, and because I now have time and money freedom, I'm able to say, man, I don't feel like working right now, or, I need some rejuvenation. Let me go get on my spot on my couch and take this nap. So those are a couple of the benefits, but also the revenue on repeat. I'd have to say it's not about the money, but it is, because money helps you to do more good. And because I'm able to have revenue on repeat, I know that because this contract is a long-term contract, it might be 50K, it might be 100K, and I'm invoicing every month to get a portion of that money back into my bank account. That is its own motivator for me. But because of that, I am now able to live a little bit more liberally, to give more liberally. And those are some of the things that are really important when you stop and you think about your life, when you get to 80 years old and you're reflecting back on how much impact you were able to have in the world. You can have more impact with more money. And so that's why I think that that benefit is so important. And I would say that about 70% of my revenue comes from landing multiple contracts and relationships based on the presence that I've built on and offline. And I'm also able to say no to the things that overwhelm me, the things that I really can't stand doing. I now don't have to be that entrepreneur who has to choose, man, I need to pay X amount of bills this month, so I'm gonna go ahead and take this job. That's not the best crossroads to be at. But of course, as you grow and you establish and as you learn, you figure out that corporate contracts is a way for you to get out of the rat race. So those are some of the major benefits. You get to say yes to the projects where you can do less and earn more and have more impact.
Yes, Tiffany, I love that you mentioned the fact that I think that coaching, you said, kind of limits you. And I think that's a big message we want to put on the podcast, is that it's about working smarter. And like you said, the freedom to do these things that you love and say no, because I think that we become vulnerable to situations if we don't have those options.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When we are able to have that type of freedom, we're not so tied down. When you are stuck with one-on-one coaching, now I'm not putting down one-on-one coaching, because I feel like everybody who is a coach or a consultant probably started in a similar space. And there's value in one-on-one coaching. There's value in getting to know who your ideal client is very intimately, but you don't want to stay there because it's not scalable. You'll spend all of your time and you only have so much time in a day. I can't coach 15 different people in a day to meet my revenue goals. Either you're going to have to raise your prices significantly, or you're going to have to ask God for extra time. And the second one is not possible.
Let me know when you find out.
Yeah, okay.
That is so true. I agree.
Absolutely.
Yes. I love that. And so one of the things you mentioned before is that you took your book and then you were able to, use that to get speaking engagement, and it built just so many more opportunities for you. For someone who's listening, like you mentioned, coaches, experts, consultants, how can they try to craft their services in a way that it creates? Well, first I want to talk about influence and impact. So how can one start to build the influence and impact so that they can kind of like attract these opportunities to them?
Well, I think it first starts with understanding where your true skills lie. So I have something called the FIRE method that I like to tell my clients to use in order to know where to start. And the FIRE method is, what do you know or have you learned formally? That's the F. What do you know or have you learned informally? The I. And how have you helped yourself or others achieve results? The R. And what knowledge can you tap based on your experiences, which is the E. So once you start to really understand where you fall, because it may be all of these, it may just be a couple of these, but that's okay. First, find out where your exact skill set lies, and then you can start to create impact by serving specifically. Your client should be in alignment with your expertise. And when you operate from this space, your results are going to be explosive. So that's where I have all of my clients to start before they begin crafting their actual services.
I love that. So it's like the fire, the fire, you have to actually be lit. Some people say I'm lit. So
I'm lit.
Yes. I'm lit. You gotta be lit.
Yeah, you got to be lit. And then it moves into the crafting your services piece. So I don't know if that's where you were going.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So let's talk about that a little bit. So with
Mm-hmm.
crafting your services, what you have to do is take inventory of where you've had the most success and then determine the common denominator. And what is it that ties these experiences together? And once you figure that out, that's your secret sauce. And that's what you want to package together. So a good example of this would be with me. I'm an education consultant, but I'm also a business consultant. So on the education consulting side, both my students and teachers whom I've worked with and whom I've presided over, they've experienced the most success when I've coached and trained them around the skill of writing. That writing is my jam. So the proof is in their consistent growth, acing their exams, and the strengthened teaching strategy that they experience. But on the business consulting side, my clients have been able to quit their 9 to 5 within 1 to 2 years of working with me, and some in shorter time frames. And they've also met their annual revenue goals, and they're able to consistently pitch and land corporate clients. So in those two caveats, those are some of the common denominators. And because I know that these are commonalities within my success, I create valuable packages that help my ideal clients get to the end result. And so for the listeners here today, I want to encourage you to package your skills based on the guarantee of a desired outcome for your ideal client. What do they want when they come to work with you? And typically this falls into a few areas. They want to leave pain and enjoy pleasure. So your goal is to ask, how can I make more money, make a massive change, increase productivity, significantly decrease risk, or advance an initiative or a mission? Those are some of the questions that you need to ask yourself, because those are the things that your clients are typically going to want a result from you for. So those are the areas where I typically coach clients, and that helps them to have a more impactful result.
Like, you just laid that out for us so clearly. Like, I just love it. And I'm like, this is a whole masterclass at this point. So I appreciate
that.
Yes, because it's so true. And I was just speaking with someone about this, I think, and you further drove it home, is the fact that we have to be able to create those results and show those receipts for people. And that's what people want to see. What results did you get for someone else?
Exactly.
And it's not always about the person having the biggest audience.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Because that's the thing, right? Mm-hmm. Online, it's like, how many followers do I have? How many people are responding to my posts? When actually, if you're really doing your thing, some of the people who are making the most money in the coaching and consulting industry probably have the least amount of following. And I say that with a grain of salt, of course, because I don't know every single coach and consultant that resides online. But there are so many people making this offline money, which is so much easier to make than getting online and going live 15 times a day, because that's exhausting. And also, you're going online to individuals. And especially if you're doing it on Instagram or Facebook, that's not where your people live. If you are a true consultant, they likely live on LinkedIn, and they live in the relationships that you're creating versus an individual who may be just starting up in business. Because people who are professionals and the people who have access to the type of money that you need to help build your business, they are probably not spending a whole lot of time online. And if so, it's through certain channels, and it's likely not yours in this capacity. So I want people to understand that you have to go after these corporate contracts in a different, more skillful way. When you're offering your services online, which of course I'm not knocking, because I'm a course creator too. I have a whole course that I sell online. But there's a strategy to getting corporate clients versus getting online clients to enroll in your digital programs.
Okay, so I was going to talk about the role that, creating the impact and the influence plays on securing these contracts and deals. So can you talk about that? Yeah,
the role that that impact plays on.
Yeah, is it attracting these people? Is it, okay, I see that you're doing this. I see that you're the expert in this field. I'm going to give you this contract. I'm going to give you this deal.
Yeah, so a lot of it takes massage. And when I say massage, I also use that interchangeably with the word finesse, if you will, because you have to finesse these situations where you want money from companies and corporations. If you're going to increase your impact, sometimes it's not being everywhere all at once. It's about delving down into those key relationships that are going to help you to get started. So you need to be able to get your foot in the door if you've never experienced corporate contracts before. And so there's strategy behind doing that. Sometimes you can cold pitch, and sometimes you build relationships so that that person is warm before you actually pitch them. And when I say cold pitching, that means that you've never experienced or have talked to or reached out to this person before. That's a cold pitch. And typically cold pitches are done via email, and they can also be done by phone. Sometimes you might slide into somebody's inbox, but you have to do what's appropriate for your particular industry. But you can't start to create impact until you start to build true relationships that are lasting. And sometimes those relationships come in the form of, hey, this is my first time meeting you. However, I think I have something that I can offer that would really help you because I've been watching you online, for example, and I know that one of your main pain points is XYZ, right? So you're still building a relationship, but you're also offering the help at the same time and not sounding sleazy while you're doing it. So impact starts small, and it completely grows as you do your work in a skillful manner.
Love it. So now we've talked about what we need to do to not leave money on the table, who we need to be, how we need to create this impact and influence. Now I want to talk about how to get the money. And that's with discussing business proposals, pitching, and partnerships. So what is a business proposal, and is there a difference between the business proposal and the pitch? Can you explain?
Yeah, absolutely. So a business proposal is something that typically happens after you've had an initial conversation. And that's where either that cold or that warm pitch comes into place. So first, you are putting an offer on the table to talk about how you can help solve a problem for your potential client. After that initial conversation goes through via email or via phone, it just depends, then you are going to follow that up with an actual proposal. And the reason why the proposal comes after the initial conversation is because you're finding out on that call what their pain points are. What is it that they need? And there are some specific questions that you need to be asking your ideal client. And your job is to ask and then listen, ask and then listen. So first you're discovering the problem. What is the problem that they have? And sometimes you can ask questions or say statements like, tell me more about why you decided to take this call with me. And that will open the door to what they really need. And after you do that, you start talking through their obstacles and asking them, what would it feel like, or what would business look like if your problem weren't solved? And so as you're asking these questions, it's getting you deeper into the root of what the problem is so that you can accurately create a proposal, right? So pitching is asking for the initial meeting and asking for the possibility of entering into a business partnership. And then the proposal itself is, okay, now we've talked. Now I really understand how I can add value to your company. So here's what I propose based on our conversation and based on the pain points that you have mentioned. And so a proposal is a formal document, typically, that you likely present or you'll send over after you have that initial conversation.
Love it. And so what are some of the key things? I know you mentioned that you're finding out the problem. What are some of the key things that you would say that one should include in a business proposal?
So I definitely have a segment of pieces that you should include in your business proposal. So first is the hook. That's going to be the first thing that you start with in your proposal. And that's where you reel them in with a high level recap of your initial meeting. So that's that first page after your cover page. And then I have something that I like to call priming the pain. And priming the pain is initially diving back into those pain points that they may have mentioned on that call, and then offering your solution after you prime their pain. So you kind of recap the pain that they're currently experiencing, and then you go in with your solution. So as a result of this pain, here's how we can help. And then you move into producing the plan. What can the client expect? Meaning it's the manifestation of the solution. And thereafter, you have presenting the price. So the presenting the price means that you're pricing by line item, each segment of the plan. So it could be in stages or in phases that you roll out the plan that you're proposing, and each of those stages or phases has a price point associated with it. It could be also an outline of different materials that are going to be associated. It just depends on your specific industry. And then you're going to pilot the plane. If you haven't noticed, I really love alliteration.
I'm living for it.
So piloting the plane means that you're showing up as the trusted guide with social proof. That means that now that I've presented all this information to you, the next part of my proposal might even be pictures or something that shows that I've done this and I've been doing this and I've created results from others. It may be testimonials, so that's what piloting the plane is showing that you can be the leader and you can guide them to where they need to be. And then you stick the landing. And that's where your call to action comes in. And your call to action is where you invite them to go ahead and sign the agreement, seal the deal with a payment, and show off your skills thereafter. Because after they start with the payment, then it's off to the races. What is the first step in initiating your plan? So those are the elements of a great proposal.
Okay, so Miss Washington, that was great. You just took us to school. We just landed a plane. I don't know if you're listening. I don't know where else you're getting this kind of information, because if you're listening, give us a review right now, because this is gold. So right now, review the podcast. But that is so good. I love it. And so my next question is, because I know you talk about setting goals prior to pitching. Mm-hmm. So how do you set these goals? Like, who are you going to reach out to? Which organizations are you going to decide who you should pitch?
Yeah, so I have something that I provide to my business coaching clients called a hit list. And the hit list is not, mafia based. It is my personal acronym for high intensity touch list. So that high intensity touch list means these are the people who are my dream clients who I want to reach out to. And the reason why I call it high intensity is because the fortune is in the follow-up, and most of us fall off because we don't follow up. And people sometimes won't respond to you the first time and maybe even the second time. So when you create your hit list, you also are going to have 2 to 3 different opportunities on that hit list to remind you to follow up with that particular client if you didn't get a response the first time. And so one of the ways you want to conduct yourself inside of your hit list is to, one, work with clients who are in alignment. Reach out to people who are in alignment, not just because you have always thought about this brand and it would be so great to work with them, or I saw X, Y, and Z work with them, I'm going to go after a contract with them too. No, what are the core values of your company? That's where you start. And after you understand what your core values are, like integrity and trust and operating inside of excellence, being the go-to expert in your field. Like, there's so many different ways to create your core values. And under them, you probably have some indicators. How do those indicators align with those of the businesses that you want to do business with? So you can do that by finding their website, first of all, going to search their press releases. Where have they been in the past? And how are they showing up in this world? What kind of work have they been doing philanthropically? What kind of work did they do to earn their money? And how does my mission align with what they're currently doing in this space? And so that's how you start to create your hit list. It's really based on research, because you don't want to start working with a company that's out of alignment with your core values, because if something happens to go wrong or go outside of what your core values are with that other company, that still falls back on you. So that's why I say that's where you initially start to determine where you want to go. And that means you have to have a very deep understanding of how much money does this company make per annum? Right. What type of projects do they typically take on? Am I my business within the realm of who they typically work with. So those are some major questions you have to ask going in before you even approach, because if you go in unresearched, you're going to be unprepared.
Right. Unresearched, unprepared. I love it. And so is there a certain thing because I hear this thing about, making sure before the budgets. So would you say that there's a perfect time to pitch, or is it just based on certain seasons, quarterly, annually?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of all of those things. Mm-hmm. You have to find out what the cadence of your industry is and then operate within that cadence. So for some companies, pitch season starts in October because they're setting what their budget is going to be for the new fiscal year. You also have to know what their fiscal year is, because everybody's fiscal year is not January through December. So that's a part of the research piece. And for my industry, for example, inside of education, budget comes out during a certain month. That month is October in general here in Houston, Texas. And so because I know budgets are released based on the amount of students, the amount of bodies on campus, principals don't typically know how much money they're going to get until they know what their enrollment is and they've turned it in. It's something called snapshot of the school, who's on your campus, how many of those kids are in special education or receiving certain services versus your regular education population. Like all of those numbers make a difference in your budget. And because I know that I have to start warming up to principals who I want to do business with in the semester prior to. It's really going to be right before testing season when I'm starting to make my cold potential clients warm. So testing season starts in April. And from January to April, it is a long haul to get to the actual state test, the state examination. That's all they're going to be focused on. So I know that sometime before they get real hot and heavy in that is when I want to be priming the pump with potential new clients. Now, with my old clients, the magic comes when you do great work and you get them results. They're going to include you as a part of their budget anyway. So there's no season for that in particular. That's just maintaining good relationships and doing good work so that they can create at least some type of line item for you the following year. So it depends. Answering your question, it varies based on the industry, but you just have to do your research to know what works. And if you've been in your industry for any amount of time, there are certain nuances that will trigger you to know, okay, now it's time. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. I love that you said continue to do your research. And so now I want to ask about what happens after you've secured the contract, after you secured the partnerships. What does that look like? And, as far as like the general idea of, making sure that you're delivering what you said you were going to do and making sure everyone's expectations are met.
Yeah, I think the strongest piece of this is making sure that you have a timeline set for yourself. And when you have a timeline and deadlines and you meet those deadlines, then you stay on schedule with the result that you are looking to provide for your ideal client. And that is the best way for you to ensure that you have ongoing or recurring business year after year. Because even in the bad times when their budget may not be the same, because we know budgets fluctuate from year to year. Sometimes it may be lower, sometimes it may be higher, sometimes it may stay the same. But either way, they're going to find some way to pull some strings to work with you. Even if it's a little bit less money, they still want to be in close connection with you. And you may oblige to that because this is one of your loyal and faithful clients. So I would say after you actually secure the partnership or after you actually secure the contract, then your main job and your ultimate goal is to make sure that everybody's in alignment with what the scheduled plan is and stick to the plan.
Love it. Well, Tiffany, this has been amazing. And you have given us so many gems. We've been on the plane. We've been hit. We've been lit. I love it.
Oh, my goodness. That is so funny. We did it in such a short amount of time, too.
We did.
Got everything.
Yes. That is about having a plan and what you just said. So I want to talk about, I want to wrap this up by asking, because I know people gain a lot of value. I know I was writing notes. But some of the services that you offer for business owners and, how you can help them reach these points. So if you could just share how you do this.
Yeah, absolutely. So of course, on the education side, that would require a conversation about what you might need. If you're an administrator or someone in that particular arena looking for educational services, then you can hit me up at twashington@subtlefreeman.com, SUTTLEFREEMAN.com. So I have a totally different business structure for that piece. But if you're looking for the business aspect of things, then I have an upcoming event called Attract Corporate Clients Challenge. It's a free challenge, and it teaches you the 5 must-have elements for a successful consulting practice. And that's happening. I'm not sure when this is going to be airing. I know sometime in December, but it's December 6th through the 12th, and you can go to mycorporatecontracts.com in order to access the challenge. I'll be running it again. If you're listening to this and you missed it, I'll likely be running it again in January because my goal is to do it once a month. But also the 3P Live. Now that's happening in December. And 3P Live is where you learn how to pitch like a pro and land more contracts. It is the best 3-day virtual live event for those who want to learn how to build a coaching or consulting company. And the way you find out more information about that is to go to pitchesproposalspartnerships.com.
Okay, we're definitely going to include that in the show notes. So we love it. And I want to ask, are there any recommended tools or books that you can leave my audience with in terms of what has helped you in your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the books that I absolutely love is, as far as structure is concerned and really building out your business and really walks you through that core values piece that I spoke about earlier, is Traction by Gino Wickman. And that book has definitely been a lifesaver for me. So I would think that would be one of the books. The 4 Agreements, and I forget the name of the author, escapes me right now, but the 4 Agreements. We'll get it. And Profit First, that's another book as well. If you're really just starting out in business, Profit First is a great place to start, just to get you solidified on what your initial structures need to be within your business. So those would be 3 books I would recommend.
Love it. And Tiffany, I want to ask you one last question. What does it mean to you to be Black in business?
What it means to me to be Black in business is to be outlandishly powerful in my own self. So it means walking into a room and knowing that I have enough presence and grace to carry me and someone else who may need a little grace as well. Being Black in business also means that I am making my ancestors proud because I am carrying on the torch that they handed off to me. And my anticipation is that for generations to come, my legacy will still be here long after I've left. And it will be even stronger than that of my ancestors, because not only do I have their heritage beside me, but I also have the financial means to propel my Black family. So that's what being Black in business means to me.
I closed my eyes when you said my heritage beside me. I felt that. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. I love it. And lastly, can you let people know where they can find you on social media? How can they support you?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the ways you can find me is on Instagram at Transformation7, and that's transformation and the number 7. That's my corporate name of my company. So that's how you can find me. And you can also go to my personal website, TiffanyAWashington.com, to learn more about me.
Love it. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much. Again, it was so much I gained from this, and I'm sure people listening did. And I really appreciate you for taking the time and to prepare and be here. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. This conversation was so good, like I promised it would be. So some of the key takeaways were that you have to make sure that you are lit. Well, Tiffany actually describes it as her FIRE method, which I totally love. And the FIRE method is a way to help you build your influence and impact, which is something you want to make sure that you are consistently doing. The F standing for what do you know or have you learned formally? I standing for what do you know or have you learned informally? R standing for how have you helped yourself or others achieve results? And finally, E standing for what knowledge can you tap based on your experience? So these are the things that are going to help you keep your revenue on repeat ultimately. And it's key to know the different strategies it takes to secure deals when it comes to corporate contracts, partnerships, and all of those other great things. This includes priming the pain, as Tiffany mentioned, and diving into the pain points of the company and offering your solution. Also, when it comes to securing corporate clients, know that there is a difference between securing a corporate client and your regular online clients. So this is definitely an episode you may want to keep coming back to because it was so value-packed. And as I mentioned, you can support us as we support you by sharing this episode with someone in your circle who might also benefit from this episode. And also you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for listening, and check out blacktobusiness.com/72 for full show notes. See you next week.